Hey YouTube, this is Unger to the Max here. A salute to you. And as you can see, I have done some redecorating. Couldn't think of the word for a second. On my recording studio wall. So I hope you like the improvements. But let me just put it out there. If you are a Hershey Bears fan, or a San Jose Sharks fan, or a Nashville Predators fan, and a Boston Bruins fan, you might want to turn off this video. Because, did you know that today is a tri-anniversary? That's right, a tri-anniversary. And yesterday was also an anniversary. But let's start with today. Because June 12th, 2019, it was Game 7, Stanley Cup Final, St. Louis Blues at the Boston Bruins, TD Garden, Boston, Massachusetts. The Blues are an expansion team. They came in as part of the great expansion of 1967, which also brought the Pittsburgh Penguins into the NHL. It brought the Philadelphia Flyers into the NHL. It brought not the Chicago Blackhawks. The Blackhawks are an original 6 team. But it brought the LA Kings in. It brought the Minnesota North Stars, who later became the Dallas Stars, into the fold. And it brought in the San Francisco Oakland Seals. But they ended up eventually folding. Of course, now San Francisco has the San Jose Sharks. But anyway, so the Blues, despite having great players, notably Brett Hull and Wayne Gretzky, had never won the Stanley Cup. And they were facing the Boston Bruins, who the Blues had famously lost to in the 1970 Stanley Cup Final, thanks to Bobby Orr. If you're a rabid hockey fan, you'll know what I'm talking about when I say Bobby Orr. I'm not even going to describe the picture. But, so, Blues fans, like myself, because I am a diehard St. Louis Blues fan, they are by far my favorite Western Conference team. They will not surpass the Columbus Blue Jackets. They will not do that. But the Blues are my favorite Western Conference team, bar none. That will never, ever, ever change. You got that? Good. So, anyway, the Blues, like I said, they had been to the Stanley Cup Final previously, losing to the Bruins in 1970. They had lost to the Montreal Canadiens a couple times. I believe that was in 68 and 69, if I remember correctly. But like I said, despite having great players come through St. Louis, like a Brett Hull, like a Wayne Gretzky, they couldn't get it done. And this season, or I should say last season, right in the middle of the season, St. Louis made the tough decision to go from head coach Mike Yeo to interim coach Craig Berube. But it turned out to be the right decision because the Blues, who had the worst record in all the NHL on New Year's Eve, I believe it was, surged in the second half of the season, got into the playoffs as the 3rd seed in the Central Division in the Western Conference. They eliminated the Winnipeg Jets in 6 games in the first round, and then they grinded out a tough 7-game series against the Dallas Stars in the second round. The Stars were one of 4 wild card teams to win in the first round. Quick note before I keep going. None of the division winners won in the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. The Washington Capitals, they lost in 7 games to the Carolina Hurricanes. The Nashville Predators, well, they lost in 6 games to the Dallas Stars. The Calgary Flames, they lost to the Colorado Avalanche. I believe that was in 5 games, if I remember correctly. And, of course, the Tampa Bay Lightning got swept by the Columbus Blue Jackets. Just saying. And then, in the Western Conference Finals, the Blues got revenge against the San Jose Sharks because in 2016, it was the Sharks who eliminated the Blues to go on and play the Pittsburgh Penguins. I'll get to that in a minute. And then in the Stanley Cup Final, home ice didn't seem to matter because in Games 1 and 2 were in Boston. Boston came back from a 2-0 deficit to beat the Blues 4-2 in Game 1. But then the Blues came back and won Game 2 in overtime, thanks to Carl Gunnarsson. If I remember correctly, the score was 3-2. The scene then shifted to St. Louis for Games 3 and 4. In Game 3, the Bruins hammered the Blues. The final score was 7-2, I believe it was. In Game 4, the Blues were able to defeat the Bruins 4-2. In Game 5, there was a controversial no call on Noel Acciari when it looked like he was tripped, but the refs did not call it, and David Perron scored, giving the Blues a 2-1 victory, which could have meant they could have won the Stanley Cup at home in Game 6, but the Bruins said, no, we're sending this series back to Boston for a Game 7, as they won, I believe it was 5-1, if I remember correctly. Or it might have been 5-2, I don't remember exactly. But then in Game 7, Jordan Binnington stole the show, and the Blues would go on to defeat the Bruins 4-1, sealing their first Stanley Cup. Now, I did say this was a tri-anniversary, right? Well, the reason is because in 2017, the Pittsburgh Penguins defeated the Nashville Predators in Game 6, 2-0 at Bridgestone Arena to win the Stanley Cup, their second straight. Now, for that series, home ice advantage meant a little bit more because the Penguins won both Game 1 and Game 2 at home, PPG Paints Arena, and then the Predators returned the favor by winning Games 3 and 4 in Nashville. So the series was tied. And then the Penguins would follow it up by hammering the Predators 6-0 in Game 5 at PPG Paints Arena. And like I said, the Penguins would go on to win the Stanley Cup 2-0, in Game 6 at Bridgestone Arena. And then in 2016, the Penguins defeated the San Jose Sharks in Game 6 at SAP Center, also known as the Shark Tank, to win the Stanley Cup. That series should have only gone 5 games, but in Game 5, Martin Jones, the goaltender for the Sharks, absolutely stood on his head, and somehow San Jose was able to send the series back to back to San Jose, where the Sharks could not get it done, and the Penguins, like I said, would go on to win the Stanley Cup. They won Game 6 3-1. Now, like I said, I am a big Columbus Blue Jackets fan. However, I hate to admit this, but I do support the Pittsburgh Penguins. I can't deny it. I can't deny it any longer. I am as long as they are not playing the Columbus Blue Jackets, and as long as they are not playing the St. Louis Blues, I will root for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Sorry, but I am. That's how I am. Now, I also said, if you're a Hershey Bears fan, I suggest not watching this video. You see this rally towel right here? And you see this banner? That's right. Yesterday, June 11th, was the 4-year anniversary of Oliver Bjorkstrand putting in the game-winning goal with like 1.4 seconds left in overtime to win Game 4 of the 2016 Calder Cup Finals at what was then Quicken Loans Arena in front of the second largest crowd in the history of the American Hockey League. 19,665 people were there. I was one of them. It was the first true sellout in the history of the then Lake Erie Monsters. And I wish I could go back to 2016 just so I could attend that game again. Oh my God. The energy in that arena that night was absolutely bananas. And I loved every single second of it. You know, June 11th, 2016, Game 4, Calder Cup Finals between the Hershey Bears and the Lake Erie Monsters was the night I really fell in love with the sport of hockey. Because up until that point, I did follow hockey. Like, I went to Game 2 of the second round matchup between the Lake Erie Monsters and Grand Rapids Griffins. And I had a great time. But I didn't totally latch on to hockey yet. But once I was at Game 4 of the Calder Cup Finals, and, you know, Bjorkstrand ended up putting that puck in the back of the net, I'm just like, I love this sport. Why didn't I latch onto this sport before? Like, what? Like, why didn't anybody tell me how exciting and how much fun hockey is? I mean, for many, many years, basketball was my number one sport. That is not the case anymore. Not at all. Hockey is my number one sport. Hockey, hockey, hockey. My friends and I are actually talking about doing season tickets for the Monsters. So we'll see how that goes. Unfortunately, due to COVID-19, the rest of the season for the American Hockey League did get canceled. So, yeah. And we were supposed to go to a game on March 31st against the Hershey Bears. And we were all going to make posters like, hey, Hershey, do you remember 2016? And then have a picture of a broom just to be funny. But hockey's the best sport. It is. It's the most unpredictable sport. I would say it's the most energetic sport. Sure, you can make arguments for the other sports. I'll let you argue. But I will vehemently disagree with you. Because, for me, hockey has definitely overtaken all other sports as the number one sport for me. If there's a great hockey game on, like say Boston Bruins at Montreal Canadiens, I am finding a way to watch that game. I'm finding a way. So, I'm thankful that right now during this pause, the NHL has made their past games available to watch. Yeah. And they've also kept their digital content available. So, I do wish they would have more Stanley Cup playoff games available than just the elimination games. But at least the NHL still has their digital content available. Unlike the NBA, which I'm still upset about. But that's a different video for a different day. But I know I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but yeah. I'm just lost for words. Like, I know Cleveland is surrounded by NHL teams. You have the Columbus Blue Jackets, you have the Pittsburgh Penguins, Detroit Red Wings, and the Chicago Blackhawks. But think about this. What if Cleveland had an NHL team? Think about that. Just think about it. And that's what I want to leave you with. What if Cleveland had an NHL team? Just think about it.